The next item for discussion is the complaints and conduct data, and I'll hand over to you, John, to give us an update.
So it's primarily the report on the last quarter of September to November 2015. The report is there before you, Commissioner. I don't propose to go through all of the statistics, but I'll just work through it sequentially. As you're well aware, the total complaint allegations has increased steadily over the last 3 months, and that's in line with the last couple of quarterly reports. And as you know, that is a result of the change in the IPCC procedure in terms of recording miscellaneous incidents. I'll get straight to the point that public complaints are up over the last year by 572, but minor dissatisfaction and miscellaneous incidents are down by 563. So in effect, there's a 0.5% rise in people actually ringing us and contacting us to make a complaint. So the way in which we've been recording them. We discussed it last time, so I don't propose to go over it again because it's effectively the continued effect of that. The important overall question is, have more people been ringing to make allegations against officers? No, they haven't. It's just the way in which we're recording them in accordance with how the IPCC previously directed us.
Just while we're on that though then, John, so you've explained that it virtually is a transfer, given those numbers, from the recording into the new system, from what was previously the minor
miscellaneous incidents and minor dissatisfaction.
What are you doing though to sort of dip sample and satisfy yourselves that is actually the case around the cases within there?
So the monthly assessment by the Professional Standards Department and the monthly meetings with each of the districts and departments cover all of those areas, and it's just working through, as I'll come through in the report, where those different dissatisfaction cases end up going, and they don't just go into one category, as I'll explain as I go through.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So on the page 4, the overall summary of complaints was we've run around 200 to 250 allegations, which turns into about 170 to 150 complaints per month. That equates to about 2,200 per year. Page 5 shows the graphs, and as has previously been in the previous reports, the primary areas around other neglect or failure in duty, lack of fairness and impartiality, incivility, impoliteness and intolerance, and fourthly, other assault. I've explained already about the increases in those areas, primarily around neglect or failure in duty, around the miscellaneous and low-level dissatisfaction cases. I don't propose going through all of the increases page by page because they're there, but suffice to say from page 7 onwards you'll see that they're broken down by district, by offence type, by allegation type, and then those are subject to local accountability meeting reports and specific PSD reports by district. And pages 5 to 10 go through those districts. As you know, on page 11 we also evaluate and look at complaints by ethnicity. At the moment, 64% of cases are made by non-white complaints, by white complainants, and 24% are made by BMA complaints, which is above the population of West Yorkshire, as you've heard recently from the Stop and Search. So again, there is some disproportionality in allegations made by the public, and that's looked at through the tactical assessment, and as you're aware from previous reports, picked up through independent advisory group and reviews with the IPCC. Page 12 talks about those miscellaneous incidents that you can see dropping from 746 to 183, so that's now low, which is good. And then the local resolutions is going up from 163 to 900, which we've reported to you previously, which is now high, which is good. The effect upon that at the bottom of that page, on page 12, is that local resolutions have increased and complaints not upheld have decreased, which is good. Effectively what we're saying to the public is we're listening to what you're saying, we are believing and agreeing with what you're saying. It's not always in a position to make full hearing and conduct results, but we're actually resolving it, increasing it to their satisfaction, rather than writing out offers, your complaint has not been upheld. Actually it's been written off with an explanation and understanding and an agreement with the complainant that either the explanation has been given or the action with the officer or member of staff has happened.
So, sorry, just to reword that then. So basically, more complaints have been upheld, but through the local resolution process.
Yeah, which is a far better result from a public point of view, to say, actually, we've resolved this. Yeah. Because, you know, emotionally to be told your complaint is not upheld and not proven is not a good place. Yeah. Whereas actually, we've heard what you've said, we've done everything to have, and the local resolution procedure is in place. Yeah. So page 13 talks about appeals, both appeals of West Yorkshire outcomes, and they've reduced from 16% to 11%, which is good, and then appeals from the IPCC outcomes of our cases, which again are a lot smaller numbers, but again come through the scrutiny groups. The current position on page 14 with IPCC referrals will run between 10 and 15, both mandatory referrals and voluntary referrals that you're aware that we're very keen on in West Yorkshire. And at the moment there's 10 current live IPCC investigations, 7 of which are independent, 1 managed and 2 supervised, which is, for a size of this force, a reasonable place to be. So then turning to the other side of professional standards work, in terms of conduct, we run at around 10 to 15 internally identified conduct cases per month. And again, we look at that, translates to about 600 a year. We look at those again by district. Pages 16 to 20 talk around the types. In the main, they are discreditable conduct, honesty and integrity, and confidentiality. And all of those fits with the tactical assessment, intelligence assessment, and the work ongoing in professional standards. They work through the report to page 20. Again, we look at the ethnicity of the officers linked to conduct cases again and very closely analyse that. Again, as a result of independent IPCC work about issues raised from our own staff associations and unions. The couple of just ancillary reports towards the end. The current number of suspended officers is now 14. It's 16 in the report, but 2 have left our employment. But on the top of that, there's 28 officers on restricted duties, and there's probably similar amounts of police staff, slightly less in the same place. There's an update on the recent hearings in the last couple of months, but as you know, that we're going now into this next forthcoming year into independently chaired hearings. There's also then just a couple of ancillary reports around business interests. We run at 2,000 registered business interests ongoing at this moment in time, and there's a breakdown of what they're around, predominantly rent and lease property, sport and leisure activities outside of policing, and then a whole plethora of what we would call registered and declared work outside of policing that's not necessarily paid employment, such as committee membership and school governors. And then lastly, just to top it off with the gifts and hospitality register, as a result of previous HMIC reports, we've now got that into a single spreadsheet as a result of their recommendations that is fully declared throughout the organisation at the right levels. So in terms of lessons learnt over the last couple of months, the primary ones coming out of IPCC and other areas are detailed on page 22. The first one is around safeguarding issues and sharing of safeguarding intelligence relating to a case of suicide, which resulted in officers being given words of advice, and we've spread that throughout the organisation. And the second one was the issuing of harassment warning to a severely visually impaired individual, again, who felt as though they didn't have the right access to that harassment warning. And again, that's now been rectified and spread out as best practice across the organisation from a diversity point of view. So in summary, the number of conduct and complaint matters being reported to us and been dealt with is effectively stable. The method in which we record them has changed, which shows an increase in complaints, but we discussed that last time. The work ongoing continues to be ongoing in terms of independent advisory groups and issues to do with ethnicity of both of complainants and officers complained about. The engagement with the staff associations continues. The internal lessons learnt, awareness and best practice from IPCC and HMIC continues through the Professional Standards Department. Most positively, as we reported previously, the local resolution team now, an additional staff of 16 people into professional standards, has just been recruited towards in a really strong position where we're again going to centralise all of the ownership of conduct and complaint matters into the professional standards department, and have a new team of people to deal swiftly, robustly and effectively with local resolutions, which is primarily the first complaint of what were previously miscellaneous incidents and the lower level issues. So the reports for you to digest at your leisure.
Okay, yep, thank you. No, there's a lot in there in terms of information and data. So I would like to follow up on a few issues. So I think in the report on page 6 it refers to the theme around people who may be unhappy with being issued around harassment warnings. And you referred to a particular case. It's just a question around, are you satisfied around the sort of the guidance around how these are being issued?
Yeah, as a result of the statistics we've had work through FPIU around these the harassment warnings, and the evaluation really through the assessment of the professional standards department as well, is it's by nature of the service of a harassment warning which is the most problematic area, in the sense that if I take it back to it's victim led and victim centred about an individual who feels another person has harassed them. The legislation is really clear that at that point there's no criminal offence committed necessarily, but there is an obligation to warn the third party about the behaviour. By its very nature, it's unwelcome and unreciprocated by the receiving person. So immediately the officers are put in a position of telling something to somebody that they don't really want to hear. The vast majority of the cases that we've looked at and analysed are in relationships, so there's already a little antagonism in place. So we're working on the development and the support for officers and giving those harassment warnings, but there is rather a feeling that actually those often don't end up being proven cases of neglect of duty or inappropriate behaviour. They often end up in a local resolution when there's an explanation given that actually the officer hasn't got a lot of choice other than to follow through the notification that an allegation has been made, not a criminal offence, but the notification. So somewhat, to paraphrase, the officers feel a little bit between a rock and a hard place with it. So there isn't any evidence or intimation that there's an increase in incivility or inappropriate conduct issues. It's by nature of actually them doing the job into those circumstances, but we have FPIU monitoring them for that reason.
I mean, this actually reinforces and supports, we always believe the victim at the first report, and it is not unusual for a recipient of a harassment warning to then make a counter allegation, and it is very, very difficult, very sensitive. I can entirely understand why many recipients feel very aggrieved straight away because of the nature of that interaction, but I do feel as if our officers and staff are placed in a little bit of an invidious position sometimes when trying to do their best and be victim-led.
Yeah, no, I totally understand the intent behind why harassment orders were introduced, warnings, and I guess it's just around the judgment call of officers being put in that situation.
And I think that's an example of change in the categorisation that previously would have been a miscellaneous incident when there's a quick explanation within 10 days given, whereas now we record it and then it glares out to say.
And I think sometimes when we get issues raised by members of the public, it's around, I've now got a record. What does that mean in terms of DBS disclosure and all of those sorts of things? And that's where it does become quite difficult to try and best manage it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, also, just pulling out from the report around unlawful arrests. So, has any work been done around the potential financial impact of those? I know they get taken to the good governance group, but is there any sort of work being done around impact and liability of trying to avoid those?
Not specifically. I mean, in terms of they're reviewed all with legal services, you're well aware, and the good governance group review them. We can bring back some numbers and statistics on them in terms of there's plenty of allegations around unlawful arrest,
Yep.
again because the deprivation of somebody's liberty is one of the most sensitive things that we do.
Yep.
But actually in terms of how it translates into was that actually unlawful is relatively minimal.
Yep.
But we can get some cost associated with it.
Yeah, you know, and I accept that you're going to get an element of those that are contested.
Yeah.
But obviously, the impact if we get not too many of those can be quite significant. So it was just that really. Also, I noticed on the strategic risk register relating to dishonesty and corrupt conduct.
Yeah.
You've place that as a strategic risk, and again, is there any work being done to try and eradicate that as much as possible?
Yes, in terms of the strategic risks around being dishonest and corruption, the inappropriate relationships by officers and staff with members of the public, and then the misuse of steroids and other drugs. They all feature in the work that ongoes in districts with the district SPOCs and the department SPOCs for development through the lessons learned. And from the corruption point of view, the main counteractive and preventative measure is the anti-corruption unit, which over the last 2 years we've invested heavily in, and unfortunately it's seen a productive rise in conduct cases and criminal cases that will be going to court over the next year. So it's successful in rooting out that side of things, but the corruption side is predominantly through the corruption team, plus the work under the Code of Ethics, under the sort of principles that we've joined that into over the last 2 years.
And I also think a factor will be how we deal and manage some of our historic cases as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks for that. Page 6, allegations around linked to a breach in PACE Code C, or in other words custody, have risen by about 26%, or 21 allegations from the previous 12 months.
Yeah.
Is there a specific custody suite that's causing the problem, or is it a generic rise across the piece?
Simple answer, no. I mean, sort of proportionately it follows in the main where the prisoners are and the volume of the prisoners. So Leeds has 33% of the complaints, Bradford 27, Kirklees 17, Wakefield 13, Halifax 6. So it works its way down in terms of the complaints per prisoner. So we haven't seen and identified anything, but the PSD compliance unit and the district SPOCs would soon root out in the quarterly, if not the monthly reports, as to whether there's specific individuals or specific suites that were causing problems.
Okay, thank you. Page 12, the reference you made to the local resolutions and the increase, which has been big over the past year. What options are there for complainants who have had their issue resolved by this method to feed back to the force? And have we carried out any further consultation or sought feedback around satisfaction levels with the process?
I think as a result of previous comment from the OPCC, we're slightly ahead of the game on it now, in the sense that we developed a questionnaire that is going out to people subject to the local resolution procedure. That started from November, and we're starting to get the feedback coming through the early part of this year, and we'll bring that back to you. Again, every individual's got the right to appeal the result of their complaint, and would be very disappointed if the local resolution process were to develop into appeals against the local resolution.
Yeah.
So we'll get some feedback through the questionnaire, but certainly the work from the local resolution team and the qualitative feedback has been nothing other than positive. Yeah.
Good, very good, thank you. You touched on it, John, around IPCC. Just in reference to Leeds, they saw 5 out of the 6 IPCC appeals upheld. Has anything been done to understand why that is a much higher rate than other districts?
I think it'd be fair to say that Leeds have had the greatest volume of work over the last year. They've had the greatest turnover of staff within their local department, and that's probably provided the greatest impetus for the West Yorkshire Police to bring back the ownership of all complaints into the centre. So the reality of Leeds is they have had more cases appealed than overturned, and I think that's primarily down to the volume of cases they had, the pressure on the staff and the turnover of staff to not quite get everything right in every case. So the benefit of the appeal process is we've been able to rectify them and put them right, but it's also honed our belief in actually getting it all back to the centre again and having permanent dedicated staff dealing with both local resolution, complaint resolution and then complaint investigation when it comes to that, and then ultimately giving the results to the public in a standardised and understood way that prevents the appeals.
Yeah, and in terms of working with the IPCC as a result of the findings of these cases where they are upheld, and in fact ones that are not upheld, are we taking on board?
Yes, that's definitely
learning and
there's the odd one or two we'll agree to disagree with them on, but the vast majority of them we accept, and we then put into the internal lessons learned processes, get back to the staff involved, but again that'll become more that'll become better once we take back to the centre all of the complaint handling processes.
I do recognise that there is a little bit of a risk for us in the change of our IPCC commissioner, because clearly when we were working with Catherine Stone, the relationship was built up. We understood what the IPCC's expectations were, and in her case, her style of working. We've now got a new commission who's actually covering a far more extensive area because of their own restructure, so that the ability to build up that relationship might be a little bit different. But I've got an appointment in my diary already booked in to see.
Yeah, I think I have as well, actually. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. And just for information, this morning I think we have agreed the list for the new independent chairs for the conduct hearings, which has been Julie, who I know has done a lot of work with that, with other officers, Police and Crime Commission officers. I think Cleveland, Julie, have done a lot of the administration around it as well, haven't they?
Cleveland have coordinated the process.
Yeah.
But we've, for the North East region, we've appointed 25 chairs onto the joint list.
Yeah. And the feedback is that it's a very high quality list of people that will be well placed to undertake those hearings.